Welcome to Story Search from Special Collections, a podcast series exploring stories based on, inspired by, or connected to material artifacts, hosted by Andrea Lemoins, me, and my coworker Joe Shemtov. Our first season will be dedicated to artifacts kept at the Free Library of Philadelphia.
Thank you so much, Andrea. Appreciate it. I'd like to welcome everybody today to the show. Assistant Imam Hudhaifah Abdul-Hayy and Shaykh Abdul-Hadi. Welcome. It's an honor to have you. And also my coworker Shahadah Abdul-Rashid, who's very much who will be a moderator and an interviewed guest today. So it's an honor to be working with all of you today. The program that we're doing now is in connection to something that we call Manuscripts of the Muslim World. It's a project, and it consists of a bunch of programs that are happening at the Free Library of Philadelphia. And it is inspired by the Rare Book Department's collection of historic, handwritten books from the Islamic world. And we have a lot of funding agencies that have already financially supported the library's work. And that work includes describing and publishing all the manuscripts online so that people can see them. And also restoring them. So some of them are not in great condition. They need to be restored. So we're using that money to restore these very, very special holy books. And they're damaged, they need care. So some of the money that we have is going to that. And then finally, next spring, we're going to be hosting a number of community programming. We're going to be engaging the Islamic community. We're going to have language classes. We're going to have a traveling exhibition. And we're having what we're doing right now. That's part of what we're trying to do. So, I hope that this podcast that we're doing now will be just one baby step, one small step in helping to forge a relationship with all Philadelphians who feel connected to the Islamic culture, the Islamic heritage. So, thank you for being part of this program. Now it's my pleasure to introduce to you Shahadah Abdul-Rashid. And she is a community initiative specialist, which means that she works with the community for the Free Library of Philadelphia. And not too long ago, we worked together on a program that we called Quarantine. And it included Assistant Imam Hudhaifah Abdul-Hayy, who gave an incredible lecture, and also Abdullah ibn Hanif, who's a great teenager who recited from the Quran. So this program now is in the spirit, in the tradition of the one that we had. So hi, Shahadah.
Hello there. Hi, everyone. So I am a community initiative specialist with the Free Library of Philadelphia, as Joe just told us about a minute ago. And my connection with the project is that I am a member of the Muslim Indigenous community here in Philadelphia. And Joe and I have been working together for the outreach to the community. And because I am a free library worker, an outreach worker, as well as a member of the community, it's been my role to help. It's been my role and my pleasure, actually, to help kind of build the bridge and help bring this programming to the Islamic community in Philadelphia. So today we'll be interviewing Assistant Imam Hudhaifah Abdul-Hayy and Shaykh Abdul-Hadi. They are both Muslims in the Philadelphia community, Muslim leaders actually in the Philadelphia community. And they have come today and they will be able to share things and stories and anecdotes about their life that they've experienced. Today we'll be speaking about what it's like to be an indigenous Muslim in Philadelphia. So I will ask questions to both of them, some questions specifically to one person, and then have the other person follow up. But we can't wait to hear all about the history and the story of Islam in Philadelphia. So let's see. We can get started with a few questions about generally, tell us about your life in regards to before you accepted Islam as your religion and your way of life. And we'll start with Sheikh Saeed.
Well, good afternoon. As we discussed, I guess maybe my life before Islam was, I was raised in a religious home. That is to say that my mother and father were both members of the Protestant religion, which really not really a Protestant religion, but they were part of Protestantism under the Church of God in Christ. And my father was a preacher in that church. In fact, he was one of the elders. I think he was a deacon at one point. And we were raised, I'm being the youngest, by the way, we were raised in an atmosphere where there was no smoking in the house, no drinking in the house, no car playing in the house, church every Sunday, choir every Tuesday, Bible study every Wednesday, while we couldn't even play checkers on Sunday in my house. So I was raised in, not strict, but I was raised in a religious kind of an atmosphere with my parents. By the time I was 15, it had worn on me to such a degree that I myself became a minister, a preacher, if you will. And I stayed that way for a couple of years, I guess, by the time I was 17 years old. Then I went into the military, and in the military, I kind of like dropped that aspect, and I found myself, I was in the United States Navy, if anyone knows what that implies, And when I returned home from the Navy, I had an older brother. My oldest brother was a Muslim for years. He's 10 years older than me. When I was like about 9 or 10, I remember him taking me around to the Muslim community at 55th and Girard. They had a newspaper that was selling. They had a one column article named Muhammad Speaks. And what they were doing, they were showing the community that there was something other than Christianity for black folk. This was a black paper out of Pittsburgh called the Pittsburgh Courier. Then by the time, like I said, when I came out of the service, I was going back and forth to visit him. He lived in New York. And now he's really telling me about, hey, man, you really got to kind of get away from that mom and pop thing and, get with the truth, So he convinced me to the point that I finally took my Shahadah in 1967. And since then, by Allah's permission, I've been, as some people say, on the hawk, So basically, I didn't have a whole lot of what we call dunya in me, except for those years of the military, As I said, I was really raised with a strict religious kind of background. In fact, I'm going to stop this. I have to be brief. My father taught us, he said, listen, first there's God, then there's you, there's heaven and hell, and you have to die. So the thing is, believe God, do good, so when you die, you can go to heaven and not hell. Now there are 5 points which my brother and I concluded my father was guiding us to the 5 principles of Islam.
Thank you. And you mentioned, can you just explain very briefly, you mentioned taking your Shahada, and you also talked about the dunya. Can you define those words just for our listeners who may not know what they mean?
Taking Shahada is bearing witness openly that there is no God save Allah alone, who has no partners, and testifying openly that Muhammad ibn Abdullah is the last messenger and prophet of God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, God Almighty. The word dunya dunya is other than Islam. Dunya is really world, but it's not like the whole world is world. But dunya in the usage of Islam is like unbelief and not being involved in submission to Allah. It's more like rejecting the law. So that word dunya is used.
Okay, thank you. Imam Hudhaifah, can you tell us a little bit about your life before you accepted Islam as your religion and way of life?
Yes. Well, I was born in the Northeast, Frankfurt, part of Philadelphia, the Frankfurt neighborhood. And my life was basically the regular, what you might say, Afro-American young man life. Okay. Again, too, like Sheikh Saeed, I was raised in the church. My grandmother was a founder of the church that I went to. My mother died when she died in that church, which is the Second Baptist Church of Frankfurt. She was the oldest living member when she passed. Okay, and I was in that church for a long time until, like everybody else, I seen other things that I wanted to do and be. So I didn't have to go to, when you get a certain age, your parents really, I don't know whether to say they don't have control over you, or I could say maybe I was uncontrollable. So, I did my own thing. But while I was in the church, I did participate. I was a vice president of the junior usher board, and, and I had the regular life. I went to school, I went to school and I didn't go to school. Okay. Like I said, the average Afro-American male lifestyle during the 60s. I'm a product of the 60s. So in the 60s was turbulent time. So everything that was going on in the 60s, you could say I experienced. I got married at a young age, at 18. And, I was trying to live the life of a married man. And then, of course, Islam came along. I'm making it short. And I became Muslim. As a matter of fact, I became Muslim at the same masjid that Sheikh Saeed was at. He was already there when I got there. So I think I became Muslim in 1975. Okay, and the rest is basically history.
And what masjid was that?
Masjid Ashur on 52nd Street at that time. And then from there, I went from Masjid Ashur to the International Muslim Brotherhood, which, and Sheikh Saeed can correct me, is probably the oldest indigenous masjid in the city. Actually, for Muslims, it's a landmark. For the indigenous Muslim community of Philadelphia, it's like a landmark. I went there, and then as I started finding out about more masjids, well, it was only 3 in the city at that time. Am I correct, Saeed?
Yes, you're correct, my brother. There was Abu Bakr in North Philadelphia, the Albanian Mosque is second in Garage, and then that's from Brotherhood. Yes.
Right. Well, Ashur too, because I had took my Shahadah.
Well, Ashur came about 74.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, okay. But anyway, like I said, actually, I didn't know about the Albanian. I keep leaving them out, but I forgot about them. And I didn't know about them till maybe a year after I became Muslim. But from the International Muslim Brotherhood, I started attending also the one of the original buildings that the Masjid Mujahideen name was attached to.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. And the landmark masjid that you talk about, International Brotherhood, is it still here today?
Yes, the International Muslim Brotherhood is still here today, and actually what it is called now is the Quba Institute of Arabic and Islamic Studies. Okay? The International Muslim Brotherhood, which Sheikh Saeed was there before me also. I want everybody to know he's my elder. So, he could probably answer a lot more questions about the International Muslim Brotherhood before me. But they were, the International Muslim Brotherhood became the Quba Institute when the sons of the Imam that was there before became the leaders of that particular community. and they have a full accredited Islamic school there. But unbeknownst to a lot of people is that the Quba Institute for Arabic and Islamic Studies always existed, but it existed in name only under the what do you call that? The bylaws, like when a corporation comes together, incorporation, the name of the religious aspect of the place was the name of the corporation. It was International Muslim Brotherhood, and the Quba School was always the considered the educational arm of that corporation.
Well, actually, Hudhaifah, it was the Quba School of Islamic Studies in the beginning when it first got chartered in 1968.
Chartered, that's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah, they got chartered in 68 as the Quba School of Islamic Studies.
Okay.
And when Nasser Ahmed passed and Nafi's children wound up going overseas and becoming educated, then the name was International Muslim Brotherhood. Mm-hmm. And they kept Quba as the arm, the school arm, so that now it's just called the Quba Institute of Islamic Studies.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you for that history. So our next question that we have here, and we can start with Imam Hudhaifah since you were already speaking, and I'll also ask Sheikh Saeed, is that it seems like Islam wasn't very prevalent in the city at the time when you guys both converted. So what made you come to Islam? It wasn't like both of you spoke about the fact that you were involved in the church, so Christianity was the, I guess, more mainstream religion on the forefront. So how did you come to accept Islam in an environment where it wasn't prevalent and there weren't many Muslims around?
Okay, well, I can answer that on my part. Okay, actually, I started when I first moved to the University of Pennsylvania neighborhood. I lived basically almost on campus down there, and I started meeting Muslims. Okay, I started meeting people from all around the world that were quote unquote Muslims, especially Africans. And then one of my best friends till today from 1971, the man who actually took me to the masjid, Shahadah Abdul-Rashid, who was also a friend of Sheikh Saeed. He knew him before me, but we just didn't know each other at that time. Okay, we became good friends. And one of the things that made me open my eyes to Islam, of course, was I read the book, the autobiography of Malcolm X. A lot of people my age, anyway, came through their eyes were opened to Islam by reading the autobiography of Malcolm X, believe it or not. Okay? Then, once you read that, and then you started searching for more, and being a product of the 60s, which I would say was a rebellious era, okay, in America, so you were always looking for something. You had all kinds of groups that were looking like today. Black Lives Matter, you had this, you had that. So you had all types of groups who were actually looking for the rights of the indigenous person, the black person, the Afro-Americans. So after going through all that, I would call it the black experience. Okay? And not that Islam is only for black people. I started getting interested in Islam. And like I said, by the time 1975 came around, I was ready for something different in my life. And I chose Islam. And basically, that's how I became Muslim. Actually, one day, brother said, you want to go to the masjid with me? And I said, sure, why not? And I went to the masjid, and they asked me, after they talked to me. Another friend of Sheikh Saeed. So I would have to refer back to Sheikh Saeed because he was already on the set and he knew all these people. Brother by the name of Farouk. What was his last name, Saeed?
Abdul Kabir.
Yeah, Farouk Abdul Kabir actually gave me Shahadah on that day, and I became Muslim.
Wonderful. So you said Sheikh Saeed is your elder, and you're actually, well, both of you are my elders.
Uh-huh.
So we...
They'll keep reminding us.
Okay. Well, listen, I feel blessed to have you. So
Yes.
from the mountaintop. How about that?
Okay. As a matter of fact, let me, if I may add into that, is that when I moved, after I took Shahadah, I moved to 52nd and Chester. And guess who lived on the second floor?
Who?
Your mom and your brothers and sisters. Yeah, they lived underneath me at that apartment. Yeah, okay. So very close connection, everybody.
Yes, thank you. Yes. Sheikh Saeed, I'll repeat the question again. What made you accept Islam in a city and environment where it wasn't prevalent? There weren't very many Muslims around, and your account will be very different than Imam Hudhaifah, because you have been Muslim since what year?
1967, by Allah's permission.
Okay, alhamdulillah. Okay.
If I might say, as I said, I had a brother that was 10 years my senior, and I remember. I guess he must have been about maybe 14, 15. He's 10 years my senior, but I remember when he used to use an eyebrow pencil of my father's. It was called Maybelline. My father used it on his mustache, and he used to take this Maybelline and paint a mustache on his lip. And then he would paint a goatee on his chin, and then he would tie a towel around his head as a turban. And he would have everybody running around the neighborhood doing what we do when we pray, bowing down to him, bowing. You know what I mean? You know, and they were calling, you know, you're royal, you know. So that, and at 9 years old, like I said, by the time I was like 9, I was going around with him. I was meeting Muslims, not knowing I'm meeting Muslims. I'm meeting people like my brother, so to speak, you know. And then when I went into the military, after going through the changes of preaching and all that, I went to the military. When I was in the military, I found myself in Morocco. I found myself in Istanbul, Turkey. I found myself in Spain, and it was in Spain. I was in Palma de Mallorca, Spain, when I met these 2 or 3 Europeans that were vacationing in Spain, young people that were vacationing in Spain. And one of the people, the brother, he was a young man, he wrote a little doodle on a napkin. We were in a bar, and he wrote a doodle, so I said, on a napkin. I took that doodle and I said, well, I'll have this as a memory. I took it home with me. When I became a Muslim, that was 1963, 1964. When I became a Muslim and I began to live my life as a Muslim, I was moving my belongings from one house to another. So I came across my scrapbook and I opened it. There was this doodle, but it wasn't a doodle. He had written in Arabic, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So that was with me. Being in Morocco was with me. And then an incident occurred in my life where my mother said that I was being chastised, you know, because I had stopped preaching, you know. And my brother said, "Nah, man, that ain't the case. The case is you just need to be a Muslim." So now all I know is how I've lived through those years of the newspaper, being in Morocco and whatnot, you know. So I said, well, like you? And he said, yes. And I was at his home in New York when the brother that became what became known as the Dar Islam movement, his name was Jab Mahmoud. He talked to me, him and my brother talked to me, and they explained to me the 5 pillars and the principles. And they even explained to me something that you don't hear too much mentioned amongst new Shahadahs, and that is a description of the belief in brief, you know. And after they explained it to me, hey, I took my brother's word, you know, and by Allah's permission, because Allah guides to Islam, by Allah's permission, I submitted and I took Shahada. I bore witness openly that there is no God but Allah, Muhammad is his messenger. And since then, well pleased am I with Allah as my Lord, Muhammad as my prophet, and Islam as my religion.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you. In your opinion, has the Philadelphia community been more accepting of Islam since the time when you embraced it?
Well, I think so, and the reason I think that is because what I think happened, is that the convert to Islam, especially the Black American convert to Islam, he had to deal with his heart, his faith, and his belief that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was God Almighty. Because at the time, what was happening was there was this pseudo-religious atmosphere for Black people from the Nation of Islam, which made it sound like if you were Black, you belonged to the Nation of Islam, which in actuality was not really the case. So a term was coined, Orthodox. So the Orthodox Muslim, I think that what we had was a more pro-Islam attitude as opposed to an anti-America attitude, And at the time, like you said, it wasn't a whole lot of people, but the few of us that were like that, we literally, first of all, we kept the mosque open 24 hours a day. That made it possible to worship Allah around clock. When the people saw us, they saw us in the community, helping and aiding the community. And I think that little spark to like now, from that one mosque to like now, there's over 65 mosques in this city, maybe more than that by this time. And I think that the populace itself appreciated, or by Allah's permission, appreciated the attitude that we held to establish Islam and to bring peace as opposed to everything anti. No, we weren't anti. We were pro-Islam. And I think that, through the years, this is now almost 2021. We got people that's politicians, that's Muslims. We've had Eid prayers, Eid feasts in City Hall. We have politicians that are Muslims right now. You know what I mean? Working within the overall community. So I think through the years, it's definitely been more accepted.
And I know even the school district, on the school district calendar, they have Eid days that everyone gets off. I remember being, when I was in the Philadelphia school system as a child, if we wanted to have off for the Eid, we had to take the day off, and our parents had to write us like a explanation note, like, my child will be off for this day for their religious holiday. And now we don't even have to do that. Like, the kids of this generation don't have to do that because it's on the calendar. Everybody gets off that day.
Exactly.
There's definitely been changes and more mainstream. And I do appreciate things like that. Okay, so kind of in the same topic, but a little different, I'll ask Imam Hudhaifah, how have the indigenous Muslim population kind of set the standard for the current practice of Islam in Philadelphia or even America?
Well, I'll say this. It is a well-known fact throughout the United States, maybe even internationally, that Philadelphia is almost like the Mecca of Islam in the United States. Okay? Whenever there's something that affects the Muslim community, the Muslims around the United States always look to see, well, what is Philadelphia doing? So Philadelphia has been very progressive in setting the standard for Islam. Like Shaykh Saeed said, and he basically said it all, that even back then in the 60s, they were establishing the prayer. They were keeping the masjid open for the prayer 5 times a day, which is the most important thing. And then they seen them as opposed to, and I can appreciate what he said as far as not separating from the Afro-American, Black, Indigenous community. We were a part of the community back then. We did things and we had jobs. And when we went on the jobs, I don't want to use the word demanded our rights, but we asked that our rights be recognized. Okay? Even like he said, you see Muslims in politics now. You see Muslim women driving buses. All right, you see Muslim women all over the place. You see Muslim policemen. You see Muslims are in every aspect. So what that means is that some people even had these jobs before they became Muslim, or they went on the jobs as a Muslim. Now, if I can go back, I worked for the Philadelphia School District for 35 years, and I was probably the first person who addressed the Philadelphia School District with, I'm changing my name because I'm Muslim. Okay? Then in my department, because I wasn't the first Muslim to establish going to Juma, but in my department that I was in, I was the first Muslim who said I need to go to the Friday prayer. Okay? And we made a deal, and that was it. We made a deal that I would go to prayer wherever I went at. And whatever time I took on my lunch period, anything I took over my lunch period time, I would make up at the end of the day on Friday. So if I got off at 3:30 and I took 45 minutes to go to the mosque, then I would stay to 3:45 and everything was kosher. And after that, any Muslim that came into my department, when they asked for to go to prayer on Friday, they would always call me. Is this guy Muslim or is she Muslim? Yes, they are. All right. So, we've been accepted pretty well. The other thing is, too, because of what Shaykh said, I want to refer back to what he said. We were in the community and we were working in the community, so much so that there was a position that I had at the Philadelphia School of Performing Arts. And when I went there, the principal heard that I was coming, and one of the things he said was, well, we don't have to worry about nobody stealing because Muslims don't steal and they don't drink and they don't do this. All the bad things that was happening before I got there, she knew that this is going to stop now because we have a Muslim. I was in charge of the facility. So we have a Muslim that's come. So a lot of things that we had problems with, we know it's going to stop. And it did. So, we are here. We're here and we're here to stay. This is our country, just like it is everybody else. And we want to, like Saeed said, and I go back to what he said, we're not anti anything, we're just pro-Islam. And that's the best way to say it.
That's a pretty good summation. And thank you for telling the story about the supervisor who knew of the morals and character that was expected of a Muslim, and to just know that, listen, nothing else is going to be stolen. All is going to be well because we have a Muslim working. I think that really points to the character that was displayed by Muslims, a non-Muslim to know and be able to say that openly and with confidence.
Right.
Okay.
But see, the thing is, we want to keep it real. That's not to say that
we do.
We want to keep it real. See, now, of course, with newer people coming into Islam, okay, we Muslims have problems too with the criminal justice system.
We are human beings, yes.
We are human beings, and we have, a lot of them are young people, and they have problems in the criminal justice system. And what needs to be known is that I had to do a Imam Asim and Saeed. We used to have to go to the prisons. He did it more than me. I just would go up there and give talks on the holidays. And one of the things that we had to let some of our brothers know that, pro-Islam says that you should be here. Islam says you should be here locked up doing what you're doing because this is what Islam says. Islam says that you're wrong. And there's punishment for certain things, certain crimes against society. Okay, so be glad you're in America and not in an Islamic society.
Very true.
Okay.
I know we've used the word indigenous a lot. And I know, and originally before the interview started, we talked a lot about the fact that, well, one thing that Joe and I thought was really amazing is that you were one of the first, or the first Muslim in Frankfurt, or the first Muslim in Frankfurt.
Right.
So, can you tell us a little bit about that, and then follow up with what it means to be indigenous?
Okay. Well, yes, I was the first Muslim, as Sheikh Saeed said, to bear witness that there's no deity of worship but God and that Muhammad is his messenger. That means taking the Shahadah. So I was the first one in the Frankfurt neighborhood to do that. Most of the other people that were becoming Muslim, I don't want to say they were becoming Muslim, but kind of turned an ear to what they thought was Islam, was people that they were going into the nation of Islam under the leadership of Elijah Muhammad, which is now under the leadership of Louis Farrakhan. Okay, I didn't go in that direction for obvious reasons. Okay, so, and plus I was around more, even though I knew about the nation of Islam, I knew people that were in it. I grew up with people that were in it. I never went in that direction, but when I met the Muslims that I met, and we started talking Islam and going back and forth and debating, and plus reading more, even after the autobiography of Malcolm X, it opened my eyes and my heart to Islam, as taught by the Prophet Muhammad. May the peace and blessings of Allah be upon him. So that's the direction I went in, even though I kept relationships with those people that were in the Nation of Islam in the Frankfurt neighborhood. Some of them were my relatives. So, of course, I kept, and we never had a problem. You know what I mean? We when we met each other, we greeted each other, and that was it. As a matter of fact, I can remember, if I may, playing wall ball. I was playing wall ball with a friend of mine who is now passed. His name was D.D. Farr, Alan Farrs. We called him D. Everybody had nicknames. So I remember, and all the guys, the older guys, our houses were catty corner. He lived on one corner. I lived second house off the other corner. And one of the guys who I really admired, the older guy, his name was Curtis Williams. And I remember him walking across the street one day, and he said to the other guys, not to me, he wasn't talking to me, I was just playing wall ball, and he said, Assalamu alaikum. And that caught my ear. And I was only maybe about 14, 15 at that time. So once I started hearing that, I started saying, oh, this is where that came from. Okay. So, and then going back to Frankfurt after becoming Muslim, when the mother of my children and my children were wearing their headscarves, or their kimars, as we call them, it was very strange to the people. Because at that time, the Northeast was predominantly Caucasian. So they never, and plus the black people, they never seen nobody dressed like that. Okay, so that was quite an experience during that time. What was the question again? 68 years old just popped in. What was that? What was that again? What am I telling you?
The question was why.
Look, I started having flashbacks.
The question was why you call yourself indigenous as opposed to just a black Muslim.
Okay, well, how I'm going to answer that question is this. Okay, and when you and I discussed it, we really did. The reason why I said not a black Muslim, because people associate black Muslim with the Nation of Islam. Okay, indigenous Muslim is a Muslim that's here already, as opposed to a Muslim who comes from another country, which they are our brothers also. Okay, so when we say indigenous Muslims, that's not for our Muslim brothers and sisters who come from other countries. That's basically for the people here, so that they know we were Muslims that were born here. Now, again, indigenous means not just that. Here may be. Let's take a person that was born here. but they're not Afro-American. But they were born here in America, but their may say their ancestry comes from another country. They are indigenous Muslims also. They are the Muslims that are in America. Just like we have the indigenous people of America, who would be what? The Native Americans. They are the indigenous people of this country. Okay? So we say indigenous Muslims so that we might be identified as those Muslims who were here already. And this is becoming a quite important description also, because sometimes if you take things that happen, I remember some time ago that things would happen and they would always go to a like something would happen in Islamic land, or this thing would happen or that thing would happen, and it would be on the news. So Islam was becoming very popular on the news at one time too, because of whatever. Whatever took place in the world, it always had something to do with Muslims and Islam. So what they would do is they would always go to a person in a college or university. We want to talk to Dr. So-and-so and so-and-so who is a religious scholar. He's a religious scholar on Islam, or he's a scholar of Islamic studies, but he's not a Muslim. Okay? Or they would go to a mosque where indigenous Muslims, they wouldn't interview indigenous Muslims, Afro-American Muslims. They're always interviewing somebody that came from another land. So we started using indigenous to let people know that we're here. We are Muslims. We practice the same Islam that these people that you talk to are about. So we had to use that as identification purposes. But we are Muslims. That's it. We are Muslims. There's nothing that comes before that title or that title. All right. It is said in the Quran that, I've completed for you your religion this day. It is the religion of Abraham, and you are Muslims. So there's no such thing as a Sunni Muslim per se, indigenous Muslim, that kind of Muslim, the other kind of Muslim. We are all Muslims. Period.
Wonderful. Thank you. Sheikh Saeed, do you have a follow-up to the question? I can read it again if you'd like.
Well, I'm in total agreement. What happened in the early years was the same kind of a thing. What we had to do as converted Muslims, we had to find a way to identify ourselves as Muslim, because at the time the prevalent thing was, if you are black and you are Muslim, then you must be a black Muslim. You must be part of the Nation of Islam headed by Elijah Muhammad, because you're black, right? So we use another term. We use the term Orthodox. And the term Orthodox was a way of saying that we are like at that time, we're the Muslims that's in Saudi Arabia. We're real Muslims. You know what I mean? We're the Muslims that face Mecca, that pray 5 times a day, that don't join partners to Allah, that are, in fact, we even adopted the cultural side on some Islamic lands. That is to say, we would wear what were called wahibi thobes, the kind of thobes that you see in Saudi Arabia that are actually made in China. We would and we would wear.
Isn't everything?
We would wear Pakistani suits, suits to kind of see that you see Pakistanis wear with the baggy pants and the what they call them lungi type kamises, all to say that we are other than, the black Muslim, even though we're black. You know what I mean? But we don't want to prefix ourselves like we're black Muslims as opposed to white Muslims, as opposed to Shiite Muslims and stuff like that. So we use the word Orthodox, you know what I mean, to cover the fact that, alhamdulillah wa alameen, the same way that now in the present time we're using the word indigenous, so that basically that's the case.
Plus, I would like, could I add something on to that?
Yes, please.
Yeah, that you got to remember, International Muslim Brotherhood, right?
Mm-hmm.
They had, when I first came through there was a lot of interaction from the Muslim Student Association at the University of Pennsylvania. Okay? So that was, and I'm still an early young Muslim. I was only like 22, 23 years old. So I'm starting to see a wider variety of Muslims from around the world at the International Muslim Brotherhood. And they used to call me, I used to be called by the Muslim Student Association of University of Pennsylvania to come down there sometime and give the Friday prayer talk. And there were a lot of young students from all over the world that were Muslim. So we always had a very close connection with Muslims that came from overseas. As a matter of fact, former Imam Ali Ahmed used to bring some of the Islamic scholars to come and read the Quran for Ramadan, to recite for the Tawari prayer. So we've always had that connection. It's just that we felt the need to identify ourselves as the indigenous Muslims.
And not to beleaguer it, but in I think it might have been 71 to 72. But anyway, in the early 70s, Professor Ismail Faruqi, who's now he was the Dean of Religious Studies at Temple University. He came to the mosque on 19th and Columbia and said to us, listen, any Muslim that wants to come to my class on campus can come free of charge. Just come. Because what he was teaching was the history of Islam. He was giving Islam to the college students, when a lot of them were not Muslims at all. They were just studying it academically, And he came and told us, if you want to come. No tuition, just come. So
he opened that invitation to everyone.
Yeah, we had I remember that. Yeah,
with the other than African American Muslims.
As a matter of fact, if I'm gonna, this is good. Saeed just brought up a very, very good point, because one of the leading Islamic scholars today, Umar Abdullah Farouk, or Umar Farouk Abdullah, he is a Caucasian brother. He's a scholar. He was a bus driver in Chicago when he became Muslim. He came here to study with Dr. Faruqi to do his dissertation in Islamic studies. And while the Islamic Center was open, he actually came to the Islamic Center and he taught his dissertation. He taught from his dissertation that he was making, and he gave me a copy of of his dissertation. He gave, am I saying it right? For the college people? Huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. He gave me a copy. He gave Imam Salih Abdul Rauf a copy, and he gave Munir Abdullah a copy, whose son is actually now teaching us at Mujahideen, and he has a master's in the study of Hadith. So bring back a lot of memories.
I see. You guys are
Well, actually, it's the memory that is history. It's history, and it gives us a line on how did something go like this here, because I studied Arabic under Dr. Faruqi at Temple University myself. Mm-hmm.
Well, since we're kind of on the topic, I know it seems to some people that the indigenous Muslim community and or black Muslim community kind of, I'm trying to explain it correctly. In a way, we're kind of siloed from other communities. What's the relationship between like the immigrant Muslim community and the indigenous Muslim community?
Well, can I answer that, Shaykh?
Bismillah.
Okay. Okay. Repeat that again. I just want to make sure I got it right. I'm going to give you the right answer to that.
Okay, so I'm asking about the relationship between the immigrant Muslim community, those who have come here from other lands and made America their home, and the indigenous Muslim community, because many people believe that the indigenous community and or the black Muslims, and when I say black, I don't mean Nation of Islam, I mean like African American Muslims, are like siloed and like they stay to themselves and they don't really socialize with the other groups, which I know that's not true. But for our listeners, can you kind of explain the relationship between the two communities?
Well, I'm going to start off with a little. I'm going to lighten the mood a little bit.
Please do.
The Philly cheesesteak brings everybody together. Okay. And
we all love food. Yes.
Yes, we all love food. So when you put food out on the table, especially the Philly cheesesteak, people come around. So what happens is that you find that Islam is whatever country you go to. And I found this to be true. Whatever country you go to, Islam is being practiced differently, but the same. In other words, sometimes Islam is based on the culture. So if you go to China, you might not see the same cultural things as you're going to see in Pakistan or in Saudi, different places like that. So what happens is that everybody has a cultural thing that is allowed. Is allowed. Okay, just like Shaykh said, you see the Pakistani, he's identified by the clothes he wears. The Sudani, he's identified by the clothes he wears. The American is identified by the clothes he wears. Okay, so there's no isolation per se, because when you have, and I'm going to use Masjid Mujahideen as an example of what goes on throughout the city. People come to Southside Restaurant where cheesesteaks are made. It's a fast food place, so they come. So what happens is when they come, no matter where they're from, if the adhan is called for prayer, they come in and make the prayer. They come in and make the prayer, and it's no problem. It's no big deal. Okay, we've had people. We had a brother from Africa that he lived in the neighborhood. He came every morning for prayer. He went home and he brought back some scholars from his country. They wanted to come to America. He brought them to America. He brought them to the mosque, and they sat and gave us a talk, and it was a very good talk. Okay, so there's nobody's isolated from nobody per se. It's just a perception, because you see people over here, they got a mosque, so they're Egyptian. These people over here, they have a mosque, and they're Pakistani. These people over here have a mosque, and they are indigenous Afro-American Muslims. But as you travel to each one, at the time of prayer, it doesn't mean nothing to anybody. It doesn't really mean anything to anybody, because at the time of prayer is the time of prayer, and everybody prays at the same time throughout the city. So there's no isolation. And not only that, we've had good meetings with the various groups, or what word can I say? The different ethnic groups of Muslims that are in the city. We always have meetings with them. We talk to them. They come to us, ask us for help. We ask them for help to something, and it's all good. It's just that may be a perception, but it also could be a false perception of the general populace. But it's not like that.
Okay. Sheikh Saeed, have anything to add?
Well, when we talk about culture, we do know that really language is your culture. One of the things that keeps you together and keeps your culture together is your language. One of the reasons why they separated the African slave, because of their language, so that they wouldn't have any culture. Which is why today the African American from the diaspora, we're the only ones that don't have a second tongue. We don't have a mother tongue. Our mother tongue is King's English, But everybody else, they have a second tongue because they keep their culture. If your grandmother was born in Italy and you were born in Philadelphia, you bet your bottom dollar you know a little bit of Italian. You know what I mean? And that's because of the fact that that's your keeps you together. And since that's the case, so many times, like Hudhaifah just mentioned, so many times khutbahs that are given in Arabic, the English-speaking person doesn't really understand the language as such, you know. So many places when they give the khutbah, they have to have it translated so that the people, the non-Arab-speaking people can get a sense of what's being said. So that's part of it. But like Hudhaifah is saying, it's not really isolation, separation thing. Not really, you know, because sometimes we have amongst us now, we have those African Americans, and Hudhaifah may be one of them, that are so affluent in Arabic that they can give a khutbah in Arabic, you know what I mean, to an Arabic audience, you know what I mean? So, you know, we're not really like isolated, shut out amongst them.
And you know what? Also, Shaykh Said, just to compliment what you're saying and to add to it and confirm that, is that when the masjid on Elmwood Avenue first opened up, which is an African masjid, the Africans, that's a large African community over there, and they opened up a masjid, the Imam, he would give his khutbah in the first part, he would give it in English. And in the second part, he would say the same thing, but he would say it in Hausa. Okay? So, you see?
Yeah.
That's how it goes.
Okay. Well, thank you for clearing that up, because I think it is a misconception that's very widespread.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like, okay, you know, well, Philadelphia is a city of neighborhoods. And so it's a city of different cultures and different people.
Mm-hmm.
And I read somewhere once that we were a melting pot, and we're not. We're more like a salad bowl. We have our lettuce over here, tomatoes over there, carrots over
Yeah.
So people may think that because we're so separated that we're actually separated, and we're not. So in terms of the Muslim community. So thank you for kind of clearing that up. I just have one last question for both of you. Not to make the interview sound like, not to get all doom and gloom, but no, what do you want your legacy to be? What do you want your impact on Philadelphia Muslims to be once you're long gone? And we can start with Imam Hudhaifah.
Well, I really don't know. Okay, I can't.
Thank you for your honesty.
I really don't know. Okay, you know, you run into people. A lot of people I run into, they tell me these are people that are not Muslim that I grew up with. They have stories to tell about me, and I tell stories. But we all, oh yeah, remember that? Remember this? Yeah. Okay, and now that I'm an older Muslim, I've been Muslim since I was 22. All right, so I'm 68 now. So, yeah. So, my legacy. First off, all I can say is just make prayer for me. Pray for me when I'm gone. Okay, that the things that I tried to do, I've been active in the Muslim community since 22. Really. Okay, I came in the door, and when I came in the door, I was put to work, and I'm basically doing the same thing I've been doing since then, which is a job of love. I love doing what I do. Okay? So my legacy should be, I would ask the people to pray for me in my grave and ask God to accept my good works and to wipe away my bad works and to allow me to enter into his paradise. Real simple.
Thank you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Sheikh Said?
Well, I concur with that because I was shaking my head because what is legacy? There's a tradition, a saying of the Prophet Muhammad that when a man dies, no further rewards are recorded for him, except one of them being some charity that he gave, and which the people are still benefiting from. Like the idea of trying to build this mosque that we're trying to build in West Philadelphia on 60th Street. Every time you donate to that particular project, everybody that prays in that masjid, you get a part of the blessing for them from that. Matter of fact, one of the things that we were discussing about that was people buying a brick so that your name is on the brick of the building itself. Another aspect is that the prayers of a good son for his dead father. I've raised 5 sons, I'm sorry. I raised 5 sons, and I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows them, Allah glorified be He, allows them to be good Muslim men and offer prayers for me when I'm in my grave. And that, for personally, that my good deeds will outweigh my bad deeds on that final day, and I will be able to, by His permission, enter the garden and stay away and be clear of the hellfire. As far as somebody behind me knowing something about me, they already got to say what they're going to say, what they're saying, and I don't know what that is.
You know what they're saying? That guy over there. Yeah, that guy. That's how we talk. That's part of our vernacular. Oh man, that guy was something, wasn't he? You know what I mean? And that's good. That's good because when somebody in our culture says, man, that let's take Saeed. Saeed, he was something, wasn't he? That means a whole lot. That means a whole lot. And there's nothing wrong with that being said. That's just the vernacular of our culture, the Afro-American culture.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I do want to thank you both for being so open and sharing today. And we're called Story Search. And thank you for allowing us to delve deep into your stories that may be untold, that the world needs to hear because they're super important. And I do thank you guys for being open and willing to talk to us and share with us. And
I seriously can't even tell you how beautiful this has been listening to you. Listening to you both, like Imam, Hudhaifah, and Shaykh Saeed, the amount of history and knowledge that you have that needs to be shared and needs to be accessible is just priceless. And I just want to thank you so much for being here. I very much honor the legacy and just like the life that you bring to this city. So thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it means a lot. I mean, I am, so Shahadah knows me, so we work together, and Shahadah knows that I feel very passionate about recording Black oral histories in Philadelphia, because I feel like, and making it accessible through the library, because I feel like that is just something that needs to happen, and this is just a gift. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much for having us.
Of course. Of course. And of course, you know, we have to talk to the gift of Shahadah. Shahadah. First of all, I want to say, too, thank you both for telling me, Shahadah, I didn't know what your name meant.
Yes.
Yeah, and I'm like, it's beautiful. So now I just feel like whenever I say your name, I have like, there's like a blessing, there's a spirituality to your name that's so strong. So now I feel like I just want to like say your name all the time because it's so beautiful. So thank you, Shahadah. And
feel free.
For naming you that. So, Shahadah, I have learned so much just from working with you about the Muslim community in Philadelphia. And I really wanted to ask you, like, what was it like growing up in the 90s? Can you tell us some of your experiences?
So I would say growing up in the 90s, I definitely, I was able to benefit from the framework that people like my elders who are on the call, framework that they had established, and they were able to make life easy for us growing up, born and raised Muslim. Because so one of the differences between myself and them is that they converted to Islam, whereas though I was born and raised as a Muslim, I mean, there comes a time in every person's life that's born and raised Muslim where you do have to make the decision as to whether or not you still want to remain in the religion for you. Not, you have to decide, okay, am I doing this because it's how I was raised, or is what will please my parents, or am I going to continue to do this because, I have faith in Allah or faith in God? And so even though I was born and raised Muslim, I did still have to make that decision. But I think that the framework that was already placed there for me, it made my life a lot easier to maneuver. Now, there were some hardships, I'll say. Like, for instance, I don't know anyone who grew up in my generation in the 80s and 90s who, when we went to elementary school, who didn't get their khimar or hijab snatched off. Like, that's an experience that I went through. I started wearing my hijab pretty young because I wanted to look like my mom and my sisters. Young women, we don't have to wear our hijab covering until we get to about puberty. But I wore mine much sooner than that because my mom and my sisters and all of the Muslim women around me wore theirs. So I'm like, shoot, I want to wear mine too. Yeah. And I remember going to school and I had not worn it in like kindergarten, but then in like first grade I wore it. And I remember the same people were in my first grade class that were in kindergarten, and they're like, what's that thing on your head? And then they rip it off. And I'm like, like, being a 5 or 6 year old, you don't know whether to cry, fight back, scream.
Right.
I think ultimately I just went to cry somewhere, and I talked to my mom later on, and she was like, just put it back on. And I'm like, oh yeah, true. I could have did that. But I think it's definitely an experience. But I feel like our lives have been made somewhat easier. I think every generation, with all of the kind of struggles and hardships that we go through, we make it easier for the next generation below us. Like, for instance, now, so I was getting my hijab ripped off in the early 90s when I was in elementary school. Mm-hmm. And now, in Philadelphia, it's hijabs everywhere, and it's Muslims everywhere in their full Muslim regalia. Like, you see Muslims openly wearing Islamic clothing. And I have friends from all over the world, and they say when they come to Philly, and they're like, wow, y'all are just free to wear your Islamic clothes. It's Muslims everywhere. It's Islamic stores everywhere. They're like, y'all got it made. This is like a very Muslim-friendly city. And a lot of people, they appreciate the fact that Islam has become part of the culture and fabric of Philadelphia.
Mm. Yeah, because I admit the same thing too. Like, I first moved here after college. That was like in 2002. And I am like Sheikh Saeed. I grew up in the military. My dad was Air Force, so I grew up being around everyone all the time. I was exposed to lots of different ethnicities and lots of different faiths. And it was just beautiful. One of my favorite things moving to Philadelphia is that I felt very much like all my life experiences came together. Mm-hmm. Seeing so many people wearing items of clothing that depict their faith was just really, I think, is a key part of what makes Philly Philly.
Very true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, like, Shahadah, you kind of mentioned or talked about that a little bit, my first question, but do you find people are more accepting of you now than when you were younger?
I would say now people are more accepting because, in a way, people are more accepting because it's kind of in your face. I mean, in Philadelphia and the Delaware Valley, we have between 250,000 and 300,000 Muslims just right here. Mm-hmm. And that was according to our last census. So we just did the census again. I'm excited to see how many more Muslim identifying people have wrote down on the census, yes, I'm a Muslim. So it's very much that it's open, and we're very seen, and we have the Islamic holidays on the calendar, And honestly, in Philadelphia, I would say for sure in the Black community, you can't meet a person that, like, every single person that you meet, they know a Muslim. They either have a brother who's Muslim, a cousin who's Muslim, just someone. So there isn't really anyone in the Philadelphia Black community that does not know a Muslim or who does not know something about Islam. Whether they accept it or not, they still know about Muslims because we're here and we're visible and we're a part of Philadelphia fabric just like everyone else. But I would say generally we're more accepted, but there are a few outerlying cases. Like I know, for instance, a few weeks ago, I was in the supermarket and, I was dressed as a Muslim as usual, but I wouldn't say that I wasn't dressed in a way that was more, like strict or orthodox. Like I know in Philadelphia, we have several Muslim women who wear the full hijab, full niqab, face covering, and full overgarment. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't dressed like that, but I did have my face covered because, right now we have COVID restrictions. I had on like a mask, and but I did have on my hijab and like my long clothing. And a woman decided, an older woman, she decided that she was going to throw something on me and call it the blood of Jesus. Oh. And luckily it only hit my shoes. And, shoes are something that I can always wipe off and change. But that just goes to show me that even though we are very much more accepted in the city these days, not by everyone. Yeah. But there are always going to be cases where people don't accept you, but you just have to continue praising God and being a good human being, and you move on, and you've got to continue to love everyone, even if they don't love you, because that is our way. That is the way of Muslims. We're respectful and we love everyone.
Right. Can I add on to that?
Of course, please. Yes.
Okay, there was an incident, and I want to go back into Islamic history. Okay, because a lot of times when people hear that, I'm glad she brought that up because, a lot of people wouldn't take that like that, the way she did it. Like she said, I can always change my shoes. Okay, a lot of people might have went in another route. Okay, but actually, what she did was exhibit patience and perseverance. And in cases like that, during the time of the Prophet Muhammad, may the peace and blessings of God be upon him, things happened like that to him, and he would always be patient. And then you would find that the people would come back and become Muslim because of his behavior. See, so good character and good behavior is always a plus for the Muslim. There was an incident where the Prophet, at the time of when he was establishing Islam in the city of Medina, he told some of his companions to go out and, secure the perimeter, see what's going on out there. So they caught a man and they brought the man back to the Prophet. May the peace and blessings of Allah be upon him. And the Prophet asked them, do you know who you have here? They said, no. He said, you have Thumama ibn Uthayr. And Thumama ibn Uthayr was a sworn enemy of the Prophet. And he had killed in wars a lot of companions of the Prophet. He killed a lot of Muslims. And he swore that he would continue killing Muslims until he got to the Prophet Muhammad himself to kill him. He was an avowed enemy. And one of the things, so the Prophet said, tie him up in the masjid and just leave him there. Make sure you feed him. So they fed him for every meal, and he sat in the masjid. And he came into the mosque the first day. He said, "Oh, Thumama, what am I going to do with you?" So Thumama said to him, he said, "Well, I have killed plenty of your companions. So if you kill me, as far as I'm concerned, we're even. Or you can let me go." Okay? And, and we can go back to war. So the Prophet didn't say nothing. He walked away. He came back the next day. "Oh, Thumama, what am I going to do with you?" He said the same thing. I killed plenty of your companions and I did this against you. I'm an avowed enemy of you. So you can kill me or you can let me go. The third day he came, and he told the companions to let Thumama go. And they didn't want to let him go. And they let him go. Anyway, they had to. The Prophet commanded, let him go. Leave him be. Let him go on about his business. He's free to go. And he went outside of Mecca, and by him watching the Muslims for 3 days, he made ablution and came back to the Prophet, and he said that there was no man dear to me on that day other than Muhammad. So when we carry ourselves a certain way, the way Shahadah did, that is also a way of letting people know who the Muslims actually are. That's a small little story I wanted to throw in there. That when Shahadah started telling that story, that popped into my head.
Thank you.
Thank you
You're
for
welcome.
sharing that. That's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Yeah, this has been a wonderful and enlightening conversation, and I hope that this conversation, I hope that's heard by quite a few people in Philadelphia. We're going to do our best to share and get this out, because I feel like it's just hearing people's personal stories and hearing just the reality helps get rid of a lot of those misconceptions that Shahadah and all of you were talking about earlier. And I think that this has just been such an amazing treasure oral history of your community in Philadelphia. So I cannot tell you how much I am honored, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And you're welcome.
All right, Joe, are you ready to carry us out?
I think so. Thank you once again. I'll repeat what Andrea said. It's just an education worth a lot of gold, just listening to all of you and what you have to say and share with us. And what strikes me as amazing, when you look at our collection of Qurans and other Islamic manuscripts in our collection, there's a lot that we're going to be learning about them when the academics start going through those books and those manuscripts. But one of the things that these holy books have accomplished is that it gives us a platform to have these conversations with each other, to learn from one another. So even if you've never read a word that's written in these books, it just gives us that opportunity to do what we're doing now. So I thank all of you for participating, and I want everyone to know that our collections are open to everybody, especially in the Black Islamic community. That you don't have to be a professor. You don't have to be someone who's super educated with a PhD working on their dissertation, or however you pronounce it, to come and read what we have, to flip through the pages, to sit down, that you can just come by. We're there for you. The people who gave us these books gave it to us, to the Free Library, so that we can share it with Philadelphians. So I want to use this as another starting point to continue our relationship together.
La